think we're live. Hello. All right. Hello, 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 and welcome everyone to today's live. Or today's video, depending on when and where you're watching this. And today we're going to be talking about reinventing our relationship with being wrong. Okay. And so this is one of my favorite subjects because I feel like in the world we're living in right now, there is so much complexity and confusion and information, and there's just so much that gets in our way of being able to pragmatically and practically live lives that feel good for us. Okay? So before we even dive into what being wrong is and what being right is and how we can tell if we're wrong or if we're right or whatever, all of these things, I want to just say that, like, the context through which I'm speaking, so the context of this video and being right and being wrong in the context of what we're talking about here, the truth in the context of what I'm trying to share about, is always boiling down to we are life, we are a biological organism, just like all other biological organisms on this planet. And the thing that all of us are doing, whether we're aware of it or not, is we are living in ways and acting in ways and doing everything that we can because we want to feel good. Okay, like this is the bottom line of why we are motivated to do everything we're motivated to do, why we're not motivated to do what we're not motivated to do, why we're afraid of what we're afraid of, why we're attracted to what we're attracted to. It all boils down to every single one of us is searching for and seeking for pleasure. And that is not a hedonistic thing, okay? So to seek pleasure, the root of that, where that comes from, why we seek pleasure, right? The reason we seek pleasure is because ultimately the way that the structure of reality that we are experiencing works, which is just the reality of Earth, the truth of Earth, the truth of being a living organism on Earth, is that which is supporting our growth, that which is us growing, expressing, becoming more of ourselves, feels good. And that which is going against growth, going against expansion, going against our capacity to become ourselves, feels painful. Okay? So in order to be life on this planet, we need to be growing. We need to be in a state of, and I think that I would even kind of deepen that definition a little bit. So because I know that we can sometimes think like, okay, so like in order to be a truly on a life generating path, I have to be like growing all the time, like constantly pursuing learning something new or changing or becoming better or improving in some way, and that can get really intense and can feel really negative. So I would even say growth even is a complex thing, and human life and life on Earth, we're really here to express. Okay? And sometimes the way we are expressing, the means by which we are expressing, isn't necessarily that we are becoming something more than what we are right now. It could just be that we're expressing as we are, right? Like the flower is in bloom, and then it's not like blooming more, you know? It's resting in its blooming, or it's a tree that's fruited and it's just holding the fruits now. It's seasons, there's times of growth, there's times of stagnancy, there's times of integration, there's times where we're just hanging out as we are. So like again, what we want and what feels good for us in reality is that which is fostering our growth, evolution, expansion, expression path. That's it. Okay? And that is why we are doing everything that we're doing. The Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we are all trying to get our needs met on every single one of those levels. Because the ultimate desire we all have is self-expression. And we intuitively know that in order for us to have full self-expression, we have to have these other needs met, right? That when we go without enough food, when we go without enough shelter, when we go without enough whatever it is that we fundamentally need, like the building blocks of our expression, we're not going to be able to fully express. Like that should follow logically, yes? That if we're not given the building blocks, we can't build the building. And so, again, what we are all seeking, when we are seeking whatever we're seeking, is what we currently believe, what we currently think, what we currently feel is the best thing, the thing we need in order to express. Okay? So when I talk about truth and when I talk about being right and being wrong, what I'm talking about in the context of this conversation is pragmatic truth, pragmatic right, pragmatic wrong, in the sense of what is fostering our expression, what is fostering our expression as individuals, what's fostering our expression as a collective, because we are both, yes, what goes against the structure of reality and therefore the structure of ourselves, because remember, this also is a reality, is that we are part of reality. Reality is not arising from us. We are arising within the structure of reality. So there's a very complex structure for how the reality that we live in functions. Yes? The idea that reality has no structure, that it's literally all just a projection of our mind, that is not possible because we couldn't have an experience if that were true. If there was no structure, if there was no reality of this is how the reality functions and we are arising within it, if it was all just a projection of our minds, there would be no consistency. There would be no experience to be had. Because, again, without a structure, without some form of something, a container to hold an experience, there can't be an experience. So we can know that there is a structure, and we can know that there's a structure because we can objectively observe cause and effect being consistent even when we're not aware of what the cause and effect is going to be. Like we can do something and not know what the outcome is going to be, right? So if it was all a projection of our minds, then it should follow that whatever we believe is going to happen is going to happen. It should follow that if there's no structure and everything's just a projection of our mind, that when we go to do something, every time we go to do it, we should get the result we're looking for because it's a projection of our mind. But that isn't reality, right? Reality is we can do something that we genuinely believe to be how reality functions. We can take a step and expect an outcome, and a completely different outcome that we have absolutely no mental awareness of can happen because there's a structure. There's a structure that's outside of our mental, what we are projecting onto the reality. And therefore, we can assume with our best knowledge that there is a structure to how reality works. And therefore, part of us getting what we want, part of us expressing, part of us growing, part of us being able to be who and what we are and to express our genetic potential involves understanding the structure for how it functions so that we can shape ourselves, so that we can adjust our behavior, yes, our way of life to match the structure so that our intention and our outcome are the same. The more we understand the structure of how reality functions, the more we can, so essentially understanding the structure of how reality functions is understanding what we want to become, what we are and what we are capable of becoming, understanding what it is that is required for that to happen, and then understanding how to get those requirements met within the structure that exists. Yeah? So understanding what we want to grow into, what we want to expand into, what our blueprint is, and what its potential is. Understanding what the needs are so that blueprint can be expanded into, can be expressed, can be grown, and how we get those needs met within the reality that exists. This is what I mean by being right, okay? So when we're right about something, what we really mean is we knew what we wanted, we are on our growth path, we're on our, and again, we don't even need to be necessarily super aware of exactly what we want, but we can be on our growth path, just intending that we want to be more of ourselves. We want to be on that path of self-expression. And the more we can understand what our needs are, what is required for us to be on that growth path, and the more we can understand what we need to do in relation to greater reality in order to get those needs met, the happier we're going to be. The more of the outcome the more the outcome that we're going to get from our actions is going to feel good, and it's going to be supportive, again, of our expression and our expansion. And so this is my pragmatic version of what being right is, okay? That which supports growth. And then understanding that we are individuals within a collective, that we are individuals within a greater reality. So it's not quite as simple as just what's seemingly good for us in this moment, because we are connected to the whole. And I personally believe that we can't cause harm to the whole and truly benefit ourselves. I do not believe that the universe is set up in that way, that the earth is set up in that way, that we are capable of doing something that's truly good for ourselves, that actually causes objective blocking of growth for someone else. And I don't believe that we can objectively block the growth of something or someone else and be benefiting ourselves truly. Okay, I believe that we can have short-term what looks like benefit and gain when we have incorrect perception of what we want and what we need. But I don't believe that pragmatically and objectively we can cause harm to another and actually benefit ourselves. I believe that the world we are living in right now, we're seeing this, that the people who are at the top, the people who got to the top of our structures of society via exploitation of others, via the intentional robbing of rights and abuses and exploitations of others, may have a lot of financial provision, may have a lot of power, may have a lot of what seem like good things, but I think that if we look closely, we can see that these people are not happy, they're not joyful, they don't feel good, is the bottom line. They're not connected to their humanity. There's something that had to happen where they disconnected like completely from their feelings of pain and pleasure. And there's a lot of sacrifice of their own humanity in order to be in that place. And it just doesn't look to me like true thriving and true success. It looks like everybody loses when we play like that. So that's my kind of preamble for this. And I think there's a reason, okay, so now when we talk about truth and we talk about being right, this is oftentimes a very contentious issue because we live in a world where truth and pragmatism and reality have gotten very conflated and gotten very confused, and our relationship with reality is very confused, and our relationship with pain and pleasure is very confused. And we are still very primitive in our understanding of things. As much as we have learned and grown and become aware, we are still very new to this reality. And new, like humanity as a species is still very new in comparison to how long the earth has been around, in comparison to how long the earth has been evolving. And humanity wasn't born with inherent intellectual understanding of absolutely everything. Okay, so this is part of, I understand that this is like really hard for a lot of us to wrap our minds around, because a lot of us want to harken back to the alien race that we came from that knew everything that we don't know, or the past civilization that was way smarter than we are, or whatever. And like we want to believe that if there's something to know, somebody already knows it, that it's already been discovered and we just have to re-find it or remember or whatever. Because we're all so afraid that we can't learn something new. Okay? But the reality is that humanity is not fully aware of itself. We're not fully aware of ourselves as individuals. We're not fully aware of ourselves as a species. We're not fully aware of ourselves or reality as a whole. We have a lot of gaps in our knowledge. And those gaps in our knowledge cause pain, right? When we don't understand what we want, what we need, when we don't understand how reality works, when we don't understand how to grow, when we don't even understand what we want or how to get it, we're going to suffer. We're going to accidentally, unintentionally go against the structure of reality. And that is going to cause pain. And when we don't even know why we're doing what we're doing or what we want or what the structure, right? It can be very triggering and confusing and hard to pragmatically say, okay, no, there is a reality and it may just be like very different from what I believe it is. It may just be way more complex than what I think it is. It may require that I literally discover something I didn't know. Maybe humanity doesn't even know it yet. Like there are so many things, like just purely in any area of study. Just if we look at our bodies, right? There are so many things and systems and happenings that are going on within our physical bodies that science has no idea about, that we aren't aware of at all, that we may not even have instruments to measure, right? Like we're not even aware that we're not aware. And so we can have things like cancer, and we can have things like diabetes and all of these diseases and viruses and all this stuff. And there's so much confusion over what the best way to handle it is, why it's happening to certain people and not other people, what we should do about it, what the treatments are, because we're still figuring it out. Like at the end of the day, the bottom line is there's a lot of the time there's so many different opinions and everyone seems to have some validity in their opinion because things are so complex, and the structure of reality is at once something that applies to all of us, but then there's also the relative reality that each of us exist within, where our circumstances might be a little bit different than someone else's. Like for instance, like if you have a peanut allergy, yeah, like peanuts are objectively poisonous for you. Peanuts are objectively a bad food, if you want to put it that way, in the terms of it goes against our capacity to continue to evolve if we go into anaphylactic shock and our throat closes and then we die. Yes? Whereas somebody who does not have a peanut allergy, peanuts are not poisonous and they are nutritious. And they may even be something that's like incredibly good for someone's growth if they are nutrient depleted or don't have enough protein or whatever. So is eating a peanut good or bad? Is it right or wrong? Well, relative reality depends on you. Yes? So the ultimate kind of scary thing that I think for a lot of us to admit to is that reality is very complex. We don't know everything. We're going to experience pain because of that. And if we can, like I say, which is the point of this talk, renegotiate our relationship with being wrong about stuff, I think we can make the experience of pain less painful. We can make the experience of not knowing less scary. We can make the experience of not knowing what we don't know that we don't know less scary and less shameful and less all of these things. And we can start to use the experience of being wrong in the sense of objectively getting painful results as a growth opportunity and as it doesn't have to be something that's so scary or wrong or shame-based. Okay, now, most of us, again, like I said, have a very distorted relationship with reality and what's pragmatically good and bad for us as individuals. So again, I really want you to think of truth in this context as you having a deeper and deeper and deeper understanding of that which supports your expression. And like I said at the beginning, I believe that the more you truly understand yourself, what you need, what is actually required for your growth, outside of consensus reality a lot of the times, you're going to discover that your path becomes more and more and more harmonious within the whole. You're going to discover that when you're truly following what's actually good for your expansion, you become less harmful and more helpful to the whole because you are arising within the whole. You are a part of the whole. You are not separate. You are an individual, but you're not separate, okay? You're not one with everything in that there is no distinction to you. You're not one with everything as though there is no uniqueness to you. That's not true. You are unique. You are not like everyone else. Everyone doesn't have your needs. What you need is going to be different from other people. What you're here to express is different from everything else. And you are a puzzle piece within the whole that, again, we can't nourish the liver in a way that's truly nourishing for the liver that harms the kidney. If something is really actually good for the liver, it's going to be good for the kidneys too. If something is truly good for the kidneys, it's going to be good for the whole body, because the kidneys are a separate entity within the body. They have their own unique needs, their own unique function, their own unique way of being. And when their needs are met, the kidneys functioning make the entire body function better. It literally supports the function of everything else. Just by it getting its needs met and then doing its thing, it naturally supports the rest of the body in doing everything it does. When the kidneys aren't getting its needs met, when the kidneys can't function optimally, everything suffers. So this is why I say, you pragmatically learning what is truly beneficial for you, what is truly supportive of your growth path, your self-expression, your true expression. That is you doing the best thing you can do for the entirety of humanity and the earth, because it's going to involve that stuff. You are going to become more and more community-minded. You are going to become more and more aware of how everything functions. You're going to become more and more expanded in your perspective and seeing how your actions play out and affect the whole. And the more you're following your true guidance of pain and pleasure, the more doing what's harmonious for the whole is going to feel good for you. Like it's not going to be a thing where you're having to constantly weigh, do I do the thing that I really want to do that feels really good, but I know it's terrible for humanity, or do I do the thing that I know is really good for humanity, but it feels terrible for me? It's not going to be like that. The closer we get to true reality, the more doing what's right for ourselves is what's right for humanity. What feels good is what's right for the whole. What's right for the whole is what feels good. Okay, so that's the other thing that I want to express, is that focusing on yourself when you truly do it, it doesn't actually make you self-centered. It will make you more pragmatic for everyone, because you are a part of a collective. And what is good for you is going to be what's good for everyone else. What is harmful for you is going to be harmful for everyone else. And you're going to start to feel that. You're going to feel the difference. Okay? So now, why are we so disconnected from reality? Why isn't this taught in school? Why isn't this like the basic foundations of like, yeah, we all want to grow and we need to just figure out what we need to grow, and that's pragmatic and that makes a lot of sense, right? Like, we're life wants to grow, life wants to express, me figuring out how to express myself. I'm going to offer what I'm going to offer to the world while I do that. The me getting my needs met supports the whole. The whole getting their needs met supports me. Me being myself, and then outcome, right? Like if something is painful, we say, okay, that's obviously not in alignment with reality. If something hurts, we question it. If something truly feels good, we follow it. And that's how we learn. It's really that simple. Why don't we live like that? Like, why is this so complicated? And why are we in a place now where people literally don't even believe that there is truth? People don't even believe that there is right and wrong. People are getting to the point of being either like so dead set on their thing, even though they're getting terrible results. Yes, people are objectively getting nowhere near the results they're wanting, and they can convince themselves that they are. They can convince themselves that they're right, and they just need to do it in a different way. They can literally fool themselves to death, in pain, numb, stimulate, cope, do all of these things. And at the same time, we have people who just say, like, there is no reality. It's all just relative. It's all just what we think. It's all just our own projection. There is no right and there is no wrong, and it's all this floaty, airy-fairy, what if everybody gets to be right about everything and we just don't say anyone's wrong anymore. And we also have people who really believe that consensus reality is reality. Like, if we all just agree on this thing, then those will be the results. Or if a guru or a teacher or someone we really believe in tells us we're right, then we're right. That's what makes it right. Instead of, well, no, do like objective results check, right? And people, we often just feel like we don't know if we're doing it right? Like, just that is like one of the main questions I always get asked as a spiritual teacher is like, well, how do I know if I'm doing it right? How do I know if I'm on the right path? How do I know if, and it's like, well, yes, exactly. Why do we even need to ask that question? Why don't we have a basic understanding of, am I on the right path or not? Okay, so here are I have 6 reasons that I think this is the way that it is. Number 1, as we go through the education system, most of us are being unintentionally unaware that we are being indoctrinated, that right and wrong are completely arbitrary things. Right? Like, when we are in math class and when we're in science class, maybe a little bit less with science, but especially when we're in like philosophy or we're memorizing history facts or whatever, I believe, it is my opinion, that in the education system that we have right now, because so much of what we're taught in the education system has no practical bearing on our lives whatsoever. Like, literally could not make a difference if you understand trigonometry or not. Could not make a difference if you remember exactly what happened in World War II and who was on whose side and all of these things. The bottom line being that, like, we're not taught things. We're not taught skills. We're not taught information that's readily practicable in our lives. So much of what we are taught is essentially, for all intensive purposes, in the context of our individual lives, arbitrary. And so we start to have this relationship with being right and being wrong, right? Like the grading system itself, like literally being judged on your capacity to memorize facts that have absolutely nothing to do with you. And that's your definition. That's being right, indoctrinated into you, that's what being right is, or that's what being wrong is. It's an authority figure telling you facts that literally have nothing to do with your reality, that you have no connection to, and did you memorize them and regurgitate them back properly? Right? If that's our relationship with being right and wrong, first things first, it's no wonder so many of us have no connection to what being right or wrong is. Because the education system has set us up that being right and being wrong, like I said, is regurgitating facts that have literal no practical application in our lives, that we have no connection to, that don't mean anything. Essentially, that don't mean anything to us. Right? Like, unless you're going to go on and become a historian and study the way that history went down and then apply that knowledge to how we are right now, and then apply that to like our social systems now, and like what's pragmatically good for us socially and what's not, and we're learning from history, like that is helpful information. But just this happened on this date, this happened on this date, this happened on this date, and you don't care why, you don't see what effect it had, there's no critical thinking that's going on, there's no what does this mean, how did this affect us, how does this affect anything, we're not going to have a very good understanding of reality. Versus, like, if we were out in nature and we're eating a flower and it makes us puke, right? We just had a one-to-one relationship with reality. Is it right to eat the flower? Well, if we don't want to puke, no. If we don't want to poison ourselves, no. You see? And again, the very coming back to the pragmatism, the removing this idea that right and wrong is this arbitrary thing, and coming down to know, like, again, rightness is that which supports growth, that which supports expression. So when we eat something that's poisonous and it feels bad and it's painful, we can say that's not right. And so again, right, like my definition of right and wrong, and I think the most useful definition of right and wrong, because there are lots of other definitions of right and wrong, there's lots of other definitions of truth, and I completely validate and whatever that, but what I'm saying from my perspective, my pragmatic approach to right and wrong is that which helps us to express the best, that which helps humanity to express the best, because that's what feels good to us, that's what life is, that's what it seems to be, that is what the exact pragmatic way of living is. So that one-to-one relationship with learning from reality, when I do this, this is the effect. Do I like that effect? Do I want more of that effect or less of that effect? Because we have to just own the basic fact that we are a living organism that feels good when we're growing and feels bad when we're decaying, and we want to feel good. And like I said, I don't believe that's hedonism. I think that's just the carrot on the stick of life expanding itself, of consciousness evolving. It's just we seek pleasure. It feels good. And pragmatically, that's not a bad thing at all. Because again, when we're connected to true reality, that which feels good is the best thing for us when we're truly connected to reality. So again, number one disconnection is that we get indoctrinated that right and wrong is arbitrary and information doesn't mean anything, and being right and being wrong has actually no actual effect in our lives, other than you get a bad grade, or maybe you don't get into school, or something like this. But it's not like the one-to-one effect of eating a poisonous berry and getting sick, right? Those are two very different interactions with right and wrong. Okay, number two, we experience being shamed, guilt, and abandoned when we are wrong. So especially when we're in our childhoods and we say we want to pour our water from the cup into the bowl, and we don't quite yet know how to do it. We don't have the motor skills, we're still figuring it out. We think we're going to do it, and the way we go about it, it spills everywhere. And then rather than our caregivers saying, oh no, hon, look, that's fine, right? Like that's not how it works. I'll show you, this is how we do it. I'll help you practice and I'll help you clean it up. We get yelled at, we get shamed, we get told you're bad, you're wrong, you're wasting mommy's time, I don't have time for this, right? And so we start to develop this relationship with being wrong, and not knowing something and making mistakes and making messes, right? The growth process, because again, the process of growing, the process of finding out what is right and wrong is often messy, is often involving a lot of doing things we don't know, not getting the results that we wanted and needing to learn from those results versus quitting and giving up or thinking there's no way or whatever. And so like I say, but when we're in that very delicate time in our lives where acceptance and approval from our caregivers equals survival to us, when we're shamed and guilted and abandoned for being wrong, it gets wired into our nervous system that being wrong is an existential threat, that not knowing is an existential threat, that making mistakes and making messes is an existential threat. And then we're going to have this like really, really unhealthy, scary relationship with the unknown and with being wrong moving forward, in that we will literally, like this is where I think mostly we convince ourselves that we're right. We convince ourselves that our thing is going to work even if it's not working. We literally blind ourselves to the evidence that the thing that we're doing isn't pragmatically working for us or isn't taking us where we want to go or doesn't actually feel good, because we're so afraid to admit that we were wrong. We're so afraid to admit that we don't know, because it's so associated with this guilt and shame that we got in childhood, which is associated with death. Okay? Most of us are literally deathly afraid to admit that we're wrong or that we don't know, because it got wired in our childhoods that to be wrong and to not know equals being rejected, and being rejected and shamed and guilted equals death. We didn't get taught how to learn. We didn't get taught how to figure out something when we were incorrect. We weren't supported in our growth path. We were shamed and rejected. And so now the actual consequence of our action, the pain that comes from being wrong, isn't even the thing that we're suffering. We're suffering from the upper level trauma that being wrong equals rejection equals death. Like, we're not even getting to the actual consequences of our actions. We're not even seeing the pragmatic outcome of what goes on. We're just seeing, I was wrong, I'm in pain, it didn't go how I thought it was going to go, total nervous system shutdown, because it's wired in that equals death. And we will do whatever we can to not look at it and not see it and not feel it that way, because again, we're so afraid of death, and that for a good reason. Okay, so that's the second thing, is so many of us can't even see or admit to ourselves when we're wrong because it means so much. Like, I literally have heard people say, like, what if we stop teaching our children that there's right and wrong at all, and we all just get to be right about everything? And I'm like, okay, well, that's not, that's a lovely idea, but that's not pragmatically possible, right? Like, it doesn't matter how much you tell your kid you're right about everything. When your kid puts their hand on a burner, it's going to burn and singe their hand. If they thought they could put their hand on the burner and just put their hand there and just have it be there, or that it would be fine, it doesn't matter how much you try and make it right. Pragmatically, it burns them. And you would have to teach them, like, no, you were wrong. You cannot put your hand on the burner and not suffer a consequence. Pragmatically, because there is a structure to reality, we don't all just get to be right about everything. We are all going to have ideas of what this is what I want to do, this is how I'm going to do it, this is how I'm going to get my outcome, we're going to go for it, and it's not going to work that way, because reality doesn't work that way. And it doesn't matter how much people agree or tell you that you're right. It's not true. It's not reality. It's not how it works. So what I think is healthier is not we teach our children everything is right. We teach our children it's okay to be wrong. It's totally okay to do something, to experience pain, and then to say, okay, I'm going to figure out why. right? We're going to give them problem solving skills. We're going to give them we're going to actually empower them. Because again, I understand that it can feel like we're disempowering them by telling them that they're wrong. But we're not disempowering them by telling them that they're wrong. We disempower them when we don't help them figure out how to get what they need. We disempower them when we yell at them and we reject them and we shame them for being wrong. But we also disempower them if we try to tell them that everything they do is right, because it isn't. And it will hinder their capacity to get their needs met in the future. It will hinder their capacity to actually work within the structure, because they are going to be wrong. They are going to be unaware. They are going to not know. And if they don't know how to problem solve when they don't know, if they don't know how to figure things out that they don't already know, if they don't know how to adjust their expectation based on what happened in real reality, they are disempowered. So we don't want to make it that everyone just gets to be right, because reality doesn't work that way. Reality is not bending to our will. There are certain things and certain times and certain places where we all have a different perspective, and everyone's perspective is part of the whole, and everyone gets to hold their perspective. That absolutely exists. There are times and places where everybody gets to be right, in the sense of like what it felt like for them or what they experienced or whatever. And there are times when it's just like, no, that's not how you get that. That's never going to be the result you want. That's never going to give you the result that you want. And we need to be able to work with that. Okay? So, which leads us into number 3. The reason we don't have a good relationship with reality is because we have been indoctrinated into consensus reality, which is we genuinely believe that reality bends to human will, or that reality is based upon what the aggregate believes to be true. That if we all believe it enough, if we all convince ourselves enough, if we all convince each other enough, it will be true. And the reason we're not getting the results that we want is because there's dissenting opinion. Right? And when we take a step back, we can see that that just sounds crazy, as in that clearly sounds false. But this is how a lot of us are living. We are genuinely looking for the opinions of other people and looking for people who validate our current way of viewing things, that validate our current opinions, that validate our current understanding, versus saying, am I getting pragmatically the results that I want? Am I actually getting the results that I want? Am I moving towards the things that are good for me? Am I moving towards that which feels good for me? Is life happening for me in a way that I want it to? Or am I doing what I think I should do? Am I doing what people tell me to do? Am I doing what's approved of? Am I doing what society is doing and not getting those results? Right? We're not looking at results. We're looking at, do people approve of this? Do other people agree on this? What does everyone else think? What's everyone else's opinion? And like I say, there are times and places where there are experts in fields who are going to know more than we do. And we should default to their hypothesis, like try out what they're saying. Because they have experience we don't have. They have knowledge we don't have with reality, one-to-one reality. And they can say, like, look, you don't need to try all these different things. I've done all the experiments. If this is the result you want, here's how I got it. You can just do that too. And that's pragmatic. Yes? And at the same time, if the people you're looking at aren't getting the result that you want, it doesn't matter how many people agree with them. It doesn't matter how much approval they're getting. They're not getting the result. And they're not going to get the result if that's not how it works. You see? So we were raised in consensus reality. We were raised, again, in our childhoods where consensus reality was pragmatically how we lived. Right? When we were small children, being approved of was getting our needs met. We learned in our early childhood that consensus reality was survival. And then most of us never evolved past that to now that we are not under the control of our caregivers who will withhold or give what we need to us based on their approving of us. And now that we're adults who can learn to meet our own needs and learn to understand, again, this pragmatic cause and effect, am I getting what I need? Am I not? Is it working? Is it not? We continue to default to the thing that's going to help me get my needs met is being approved of. The thing that's going to get me the results is everyone agreeing. So that's a big separator from real reality. We are still operating as though consensus opinion, consensus reality, or the rebellion from consensus reality is right, versus what is the pragmatic outcome? What is actually the outcome? Because again, so much of the like, okay, it doesn't seem like consensus is right, so I'm going to rebel and do the opposite. But does that actually give you the results that you want? Did that actually give you something better? Or was it just a rebellion? Right? We have to look at it like that. The next thing is oversaturation. Again, we live in this information age where so much information is being pulled at us that we don't even have the time to figure out if what we're being told is true or false in real reality, because we can't weigh the things that we're being told against real reality. We don't have the time, we don't have the context, we don't have the life experience to even be able to take the information that we're taking in and then to say, okay, well, I'm going to test that. Is this true? This thing that someone said, can I verify that in reality with results? Like, we're so disconnected from the people or the person or the institution that they're talking about that we couldn't prove one way or another if what they're saying is true or false. And we're being so taught, right? We're being so inundated with so much information that is irrelevant to us again, essentially, because we're so disconnected from it, that it starts to get into, okay, well, whose evidence sounds good? Whose evidence sounds more true? But we don't actually know, because we're not looking at pragmatic result, because the information is so abstract to us and to our experience. And I think that, again, right, because we are so oversaturated with information that has nothing to do with us in this information age, we've lost touch with the basic skill of saying, okay, I've taken in a piece of information, can we weigh it against reality to see if it's real or not? Because we couldn't. There's so many things that we learn that literally we are so disconnected from, we couldn't weigh it against reality. We're not in that reality. You see? Okay. And then, yes, the next thing is that we're not taught problem solving or objective observation. We're taught these are the rules, this is what gets you accepted, this is what gets you approved of, this is what everyone else is doing. And that feels good to a degree because of the way that our nervous systems are programmed in our childhoods, right? But our pain and pleasure signals are totally cross-wired, that acceptance equals survival. So then when consensus is doing things that are against the structure of reality, that actually do feel bad for us on some level, they also feel good for us on some level, because it got wired in that survival is acceptance. And then there's the real reality of this thing is objectively good and therefore best for your survival. And now your system doesn't know which is actually going to help you survive. Is true pain and pleasure going to help you survive? Or is consensus pain and pleasure going to help you survive? Which one's better? Which one's right? We don't know. And so now we can't, everything feels good and bad, right? When I'm constantly telling you to like pain and pleasure, what's pleasurable is objectively good, what's painful is objectively bad, and you go, everything is kind of both, right? Eating ice cream is objectively pleasurable in the moment and then painful later. So what is it? Is it good for me or bad for me? Right. It's complex. We have all of these, we're going to have to work through does this feel good because it gets me accepted and approved of? Does this feel bad because it gets me rejected? Does this feel good? What is the actual outcome, right? The actual outcome of this. Is the outcome good, but I get rejected, so that seems really bad? Or is the outcome not great, but I get accepted? You see, like to even tease apart the actual outcome of our action versus the outcome of our action in the context of how it makes other people react to us. That is a very difficult thing for us to tease apart and to say, okay, ultimately, it's not really down to how people react or respond to me, whether something is right or wrong objectively in reality. It's the outcome, right? So like, is eating ice cream good for me? Well, it's objectively, we know, created to be addictive to our brain. And we know that it can have negative health effects. And it makes us feel good because it stimulates our brain. And a lot of us have consensus reality, comfort food, special time with mom and dad, or special time with friends or whatever, connections with ice cream. And then the totally contorted body dysmorphia of reality, consensus reality, where our body size and health status has been conflated with our value and our worth as a human being, with how acceptable or unacceptable we are. So breaking out of the idea that it's bad to be overweight or bad to be sick or wrong in some sort of moral way is the first thing we got to liberate ourselves from, right? Because that's objectively not true. It has your value as a human being does not increase or decrease based on your body size or your health status. And if we could understand that as a humanity, we might have a more pragmatic view of health and food and all of these things, because we would be more objective of just like, how do I want to feel? What do these foods make me feel? Yeah? Okay. And then the last thing is the idea that we think that we already know everything. So when we're not getting the results that we want, we think it's just impossible. We can't get it then, right? Because we don't feel like we can learn. We don't feel like we can discover something new. We don't feel like we can go into something thinking we're going to get a certain result, not get that result, and learn something in that process. Like I said, we're not taught how to learn. So, and that usually has to do with, right? We're not taught that being wrong doesn't have to mean there's no answer. And so what most of us do when we figure out that we're wrong or we don't get the result that we want is we just keep doing what we've always done in slightly different ways, hoping that at some point we're going to get the result we want via what we're doing, because we're afraid, we're truly afraid that we might have to literally discover something we have not discovered yet, because we were not born with complete awareness of everything. We were not, as a humanity, born with complete awareness of everything, nor as individuals were we born with complete awareness of everything. And we have inherited so much knowledge from all of human history to know what we know today. And there's so much yet to be discovered that will pragmatically allow us to live better and better and better and better lives. We're just going to keep learning from the pain that we're in. We're just going to keep bumping up against the limits of our understanding and saying, good, let's learn something we literally don't even know that we don't know yet. And when we can start to have that relationship with being wrong, the literal okay, this is what I wanted, this is what I did, impact, intention, didn't match. There's something for me to learn here. And there's no shame in that, and there's no guilt in that. And we're never going to know everything. But that is not a good reason to not continue to learn as much as we can learn and to expand as much as we can expand. And every time we're in pain, to say, okay, I'm in pain. I'm not getting the result that I want. I'm suffering. I'm struggling. I've done all that I know to do. I've done everything that I'm aware of. So that means there must be something I haven't seen yet. There must be something I don't know yet. There is a way that I haven't walked. And and I'm not right, and that's okay, and that's relieving, right? So from my perspective, when I'm in pain and everything that I've done hasn't worked, I tell myself, like, for me, it's relieving to say, good, I was wrong. Because if I was right, and I've done all that I can do, and I'm still in pain, and I'm right, everything I did was the right thing, and it didn't get me the results that I wanted, it didn't get me out of pain, well, then that means I'm stuck in pain forever, right? The real reality is, when we admit that we're wrong when we're in pain, there's freedom. That's actual liberation. Because when we're in pain, and we've done all we know to do, and we have believed that we were correct, and we did what we were supposed to do, and we didn't get the right outcome, the outcome we wanted, it's like, good, thank God I'm wrong. Because if I was right and this was the result I had to live with, that would suck, right? Being wrong can be the most liberating thing when we understand that we can learn. When we can admit that we're in pain, we did what we thought was going to work, we were wrong because it didn't make it feel better, that is liberation. So that's what I want to say when we reinvent our relationship with being wrong. We start by reparenting that part of ourselves that got shamed, guilted, and abandoned when we were in pain, so that we can start to connect to the actual true pain versus the consensus reality fear pain, right? What most of us need to go through the first step of when we're wrong about something, when we're not getting the results that we want, when we try something and it doesn't work, when someone told us to do. Yeah. So why do we self-sabotage when we are in pain and know better? Again, because the way that you are self-sabotaging is what your nervous system thinks you need to do to be approved of. That to do the other thing that you know is right on some level is in your nervous system going to get you rejected, going to get you abandoned, you have some negative association with that in your childhood, your early adulthood. So there's a part of you that is protecting you from going to do that better thing because it truly believes it's going to get you abandoned, rejected, and then you will die. So we have to slowly work towards taking steps of doing the better thing, having our nervous systems freak out, and maybe we do get rejected, maybe we do get abandoned, maybe we do get shamed by people around us, and we have to start to show ourselves that even if that happens, it's okay. We still survive, we still live, and we're going to be really scared, and it's going to be really hard, and we just have to keep showing ourselves that we don't die, that reality of childhood where being abandoned and rejected equals death is no longer reality. That we can be abandoned and rejected now, that we can do things that would have gotten us abandoned and rejected in the past and still be okay. And then eventually that part of yourself will mature, and then it will want to do the thing that feels good for you. Right now, it's just still operating in consensus reality that to do that good thing gets me rejected, abandoned, or shamed, and therefore I'm going to die, so I'm going to protect you from it at all costs because I don't want to die. Does that make sense? Right? So then we need to just continue to understand that we are beings that do have connection to reality. That being right and being wrong are things we can figure out. Okay, so that makes sense, but what about the self-abuse, which has nothing to do with others at the moment? It always has its roots. Okay? Every way in which you self-abuse is not something you just developed in adulthood. It never is. It always has its roots in trying to protect you. So this is why I always say for everyone, no matter what your thing is, no matter what your self-sabotage, no matter what your self-abuse, no matter what where did you learn that this was the best way to keep yourself safe? How is this behavior protecting you from something? What would have happened in your history if you, what is this behavior currently protecting you from? And what would it have protected you from in the past? Right? We have to always look deeper than what's happening right now, because none of us just walked into adulthood as blank slates and then just developed bad habits. Okay? All of our current habits are evolutions upon what we learned in childhood, right? So of course, none of us learned to like be an alcoholic when we were 4 years old, but we did learn that being outgoing was not okay, and we needed some way to suppress being outgoing. And so we're living our lives completely out, like not being our real selves, and that feels good in consensus reality, but we're constantly feeling like we're drowning, and then when we're drunk, it's the only way we get to be our outgoing selves. And it's that only outlet we have. So like, did you learn to drink excessively when you were 4 years old? Of course not. But it's the way that you're expressing this part of yourself you have no other way of expressing right now. You see? It's always more complicated than we think, and there's always a root in it. Okay, it helps numb, and in the past had to suppress my feelings, which makes sense. So use food to numb even though it hurts. Absolutely. Because right now, to your nervous system, it's safer to overeat and feel ashamed of that, and then feel the control of, okay, well now I feel like the pain I was in is now something that I can pin on the food, instead of the pain being, the real pain being that I can't be my real self, which is a problem that is way harder to solve. And way, like I said, your nervous system is not going to want to let you do that at all, ever. Versus now we can just blame the pain on the food, and then we can make a diet plan, and we can promise ourselves I'm never going to do that again, and then we feel like we're in control, and then we're suppressing and suppressing and suppressing, and that pain builds and builds and builds and builds, and then we need a scapegoat, so we eat, and then we blame our pain on the eating, and if I could just stop eating, I wouldn't feel this way. But the truth is, if you completely got rid of your numbing behavior, the eating, the pain of suppressing yourself would be there. And then that is like the really overwhelming, scary pain, because that is going to feel almost impossible to overcome, because your nervous system is going to be so afraid to express, because it's going to think that you're going to die. You see? So the numbing feels better, because it gives us all of this feeling of autonomy. It gives us this feeling of power. It makes us feel like we're in control of our pain, and we're going to be able to make it go away. And it helps us to not ever have to look at the thing that is our true trauma, that is really scary and hard to deal with. So again, that's our relationship with pain and pleasure. These are all great examples of why we're so disconnected from our pain and our pleasure, because consensus reality and the shame and the guilt and the not being connected, not being allowed to be connected to our true feelings, is part of the reason why we have such a disconnected relationship with reality. So allow yourself to have a good choice or situation so you don't destroy it or feel bad about it. Then the energy turns good, then you attract positive answers. Yes, in a certain way, right? Like if we continue to do the new thing and show ourselves that we don't die and that we get good results and that we have more power than we did when we were children, your nervous system is going to learn a new way. Right? You will express yourself, you'll get abandoned, you'll get rejected, but you'll see that you're okay, you survive. And then you find new people, and then it's going to be hard in the beginning. It is going to be scary. Your fears are going to be reinforced. That's going to happen. Consensus reality is going to usually continue to be what it is. But then again, you start to dissect the consensus reality results from the actual reality results, and then we start to favor reality more than consensus, because we'll be more and more empowered to do that. So that's my take on that. So reinventing our relationship with being wrong, in that feeling like being wrong is actually a liberation. When we're in pain and we thought we were doing the right thing and we discover that we're wrong, that is freedom. When we discover that we don't actually know what the answer is, that's a good thing. Because that if we already had the answer and we were doing it and it's not working, that would be worse than, okay, I'm not getting the results that I want. I clearly don't have the answer. Thank goodness. So now can I start to look for it? And this dissecting am I feeling good about this because it gets me approval? Am I feeling bad about this because it gets me rejected? What are the actual pragmatic results? And like I said, I lots of people will come to me and say, like, I don't know if what I'm doing is right or wrong. And I will say, I think that you do know. You're just afraid, rightfully so, that the thing you know is right is going to get you rejected. Or the thing you know is wrong is going to get you rejected. And so you don't really want to admit it to yourself, Because what is really true and what you really want to do and what you really want to be is so programmed into your nervous system that it's going to get you rejected and you're going to die, that you will literally convince yourself you don't even know. Right? Like when we ask, like, why am I doing this self-sabotaging behavior? And it's kind of like you do know why you're doing it. But the admitting of why you're doing it is such a big thing that we're just like, I'd rather just like act like I don't know, kind of, you know? And so we have to have a lot of compassion for ourselves, that we learned all this stuff. Everything we're doing for a good reason. We're doing it for a good reason. We learned it. It's self-preservation. Absolutely everything you're doing is self-preservation. It's the best you know to do right now. And if it's not getting you pragmatically good results in your life, it's compassion and curiosity always that we start with. To look for, where did we learn this? How is this supporting me? Where did I learn that this was the way? Right? And then how do I start to support my real expression? Even in the face of consensus reality not agreeing with it and not being okay with it, and the past not being okay with it, and proving to myself that I still survive. Because that's what it's going to be. It's not necessarily going to feel like liberation to express yourself in the beginning. It's going to feel like death for most of us. It's going to feel like, no, this part of me is bad because it's immature. And it's, right, when I let these parts of myself out, it's not a great mature part. It's a scared child part that makes a big mess. And we have to let that happen because these parts didn't get to grow. They got rejected and now they're shadowed and now they act in shadowy ways. And then when we let them out into the light, they're immature children. And we have to reparent them. We have to keep saying, okay, what are the results of what you're doing? How was that helping me? What was I wanting? How do I get that in a new way, right? We have to become our own parents that help ourselves learn from reality. When we make mistakes and we make messes and things don't go how we want them to, we don't just give up on ourselves. We don't assume we know and we're just going to keep trying in different ways and getting. We say, okay, I didn't know. What happened there? What did I really want? What was I really going for? How can I get it in a new way? How can I try this thing? And maybe that'll fail. And then I'll try this thing and then that'll fail. And then, like I say, you mature these parts of yourself. This is how we do it. This is our relationship with being wrong. If we're in pain, we're not getting the results that we want, there's something we don't know. There's something to learn. Learning is okay. We can love ourselves safe. We're going to make lots of mistakes. We're going to make lots of messes. We're going to have pain for the rest of our lives. Life is not about trying to avoid pain. Life is about learning from pain so that we can continue to create more and more pleasure, yes, but not at the expense of pain. We accept that pain will always be a part of it, and we say, how do I learn from it? What is the pain showing me that I want it, that I didn't know that I wanted? How is it showing me that this isn't the way to get the need met? And how can I learn new ways? Okay? And like I say, that comes with lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of learning to be our own safe place. Learning to say, it's okay that I'm in pain and I'm still going to love me anyways. I understand that I don't have the answer right now and I'm afraid and it's scary and being wrong is scary and not knowing is scary and I think that I've looked at everything and if I don't know, then it doesn't exist or maybe no one knows and I can't figure it out. We have compassion for that. We keep having compassion and compassion and compassion and reality will lead you. Like for me, right? I didn't know I had autism. I didn't know I had all of these genetic things. And yet, by the time I got a diagnosis, I was already self-treating correctly. Because I just did what every scientist would have done. Continued to follow the symptoms, figuring out things that made it feel better, do the things that make it feel better. So we can figure these things out. Pain and pleasure can show us. As long as we're willing to continue to be in pain and do something new and learn from it. And not just give up. And not abandon ourselves and not shame ourselves and just always assume that there is an answer. That's kind of what if there's anything that I can impart that has really helped me, it's I always assume there's an answer. So if I've done all the things that I've known to do, I say, great, I'm about to learn something I didn't even know that I didn't know. I assume there's a way. I always assume there's a way until until it gets to the point of like, okay, right, like in a relationship, say, and so you want to be with somebody, and eventually you have to realize that specific relationship is never going to happen. But that doesn't mean love is never going to happen. That doesn't mean a relationship in general is never going to happen. Like, we have to keep expanding that what we want. We keep looking at, like, okay, is it this very specific relationship that I want, or is it a love relationship that I want? And we can keep expanding our awareness of what it is that we want, what our needs are, and then interacting with reality over and over again. If it's painful, what did I learn? If it's pleasurable, what did I learn? Everything can just be something that informs us about how reality works, so we can understand our needs, understand how to get them met in new and better ways. Okay? So I hope that was helpful. I hope that was pragmatic. And yeah, your pain and your pleasure matter. And yeah, some of it is consensus reality and some of it is real reality. And we need to learn. We just keep investigating. Just keep asking yourself, is this, what kind of pain is this? What kind of pleasure is this? And what are the results that I'm getting? What are the actual outcomes? Yes, I may be being rejected, but is the outcome good? Am I getting rejected for eating this way, but it's making my body feel better? Am I being accepted for this way of being, but it makes my mind feel worse? Right? You got to keep looking, and then just deciding what we want more, consensus reality or regular reality. Right? You get to decide for yourself. So that's that. All right. I love you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And I will see you next week. And until then, have a beautiful week. And I love you. And you're perfect. And you are worthy of everything you want. And you are worthy of being alive. You are worthy of having your needs met. Period. End of story. Capitalism does not determine your worth or your value. Consensus reality does not determine your worth or your value. You are inherently worthy and you are inherently valued, just like all of life. Okay? The system is broken. The system is built on a flawed reality. You are not broken. You are not flawed. I'm going to start saying that at the end of all my videos. Capitalism is wrong about you. Okay? All right. Mwah. Have a good night, or day, or afternoon.